I gave 27 years to that company. They dumped me on a Monday morning. But that wasn't the worst betrayal I'd faced that month. My name is Michael Tracy. I'm 63. For 27 years, I worked for Cortec Infrastructure, an energy systems company based in Denver, Colorado. We had projects across the West, California, New Mexico, Texas. I wasn't a desk guy. I handled field safety, compliance, site inspections. I knew the smell of overheated copper and the weight of a drilling arm, not from documents, but from lifting it in the rain. I live in Littleton. Quiet suburb. Small house, decent yard, an old Toyota Tacoma in the garage. My wife is Julie. Second marriage. We've been together for 22 years. My daughter Kelsey is 19. She studies chemistry at CU Boulder. She stops by on weekends for laundry, soup, and a quiet kitchen. That's enough for me. I always believe that if you're honest, loyal, and you show up, life won't stab you in the back. Maybe I was wrong. It was Monday. 8:10 a.m. October drizzle, low clouds. I parked in my usual spot near the east entrance. Walked in wearing my old gray work jacket. Same one I've had since 2008. At the front desk, Joan didn't smile like she usually does. Just a quick nod, eyes down. I noticed. I walked to my desk, started up the laptop. That's when I heard the knock. He said, "Michael, you need to come to room 402. Now. That was Dave Sanders. New VP. Always on speakerphone, always rewriting policies. Corporate climber with perfect shoes. I walked into the conference room. HR was there. Legal counsel too. My name was printed on a thin blue folder. She said, "Michael, the company appreciates your service. Today will be your final day." I said, "I've got 4 days until retirement." She said, "The decision is final. You'll receive basic compensation. Pension, stock options, and bonus are cancelled." The lawyer added, "Your access to systems and facilities ends at 5 p.m. today." I didn't argue. Didn't curse. I just stood up. Took off my badge. Placed it on the table. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a while. Didn't start the engine. Didn't move. Just sat there, hands on the wheel. Thinking, this can't be how it ends. When I got home, Julie was in the kitchen. She said, "Everything okay?" I said, "I got let go. No pension." She said, "I'm sorry. That's awful." I nodded. Took off my boots. Drank some coffee. Went into the garage. Opened the old toolbox. Just stared. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. But the voice, familiar. He said, "Mike. It's Tom. Tom Randolph. Remember me?" I said, "Of course. Field engineer from Texas. You left last year?" He said, "Yeah. But I heard what they did to you. Not surprised. Listen. I've got something. About Dave. You might want to see it. But not over the phone." I didn't know it then, but that call would open a door into something much bigger. And the man I thought was just a distant acquaintance would become the key. What I learned next shook me to the core. Sometimes the truth doesn't come with a bang. It arrives in silence, with a cup of coffee, when you've stopped expecting answers. After Tom's call, I stayed in the car for a long while. Didn't move. Didn't speak. I eventually drove home. Julie was in the kitchen, wearing her usual soft sweatshirt. The smell of roasted almonds hung in the air. She said, "Everything okay?" I said, "Just wanted to clear my head." Took a drive. I didn't tell her about the call. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I was starting to learn how to watch. Quietly. Next morning, I met Tom at Blue Lantern. Small place on the edge of Lakewood. Heavy ceramic mugs, no music, pie that always came warm. Tom looked older, but his eyes were the same. Focused. "Calm," he said. Coffee's on me. Still no sugar, right? I said. Still no sugar. He slid over a tablet. No warning, no intro. Just emails. Real ones. Internal memos from Dave, HR, even board advisors. One line read. First the engineer, then the secondary asset. Quietly. He must not connect it. Another. He saw too much on Delta. Make it look natural. I froze on that phrase. Secondary asset. What did that mean? Who? I said. Is this just about me? He said. I don't know. But if they're writing this, it's bigger than you thought. That word. Connect. It stuck with me. Later that day, I dropped by the old office. Said I left a USB drive. Dave was out. But Brandy, the systems admin, was at the front. We hadn't talked much before. She was sharp. Quiet. She said. I knew you'd show up. Dave thinks you've let go. I said. Have you? She said. I'm not stupid. Too many coincidences. I kept copies. Just in case. I said. Would you be willing to share them? She gave a small nod. That night, I got an email from an unlisted address. Logs. Screenshots. One message, from her email. If anyone asks, blame it on him. Remove access via credentials. He can't prove a thing. Brandy? That same person who, just hours earlier, looked me in the eye and said she saw what was coming? I didn't sleep. Next morning, I went to Tom's place. We opened the files again. He said. Wait. Look at the timestamp. This was sent while she was with me, at a site visit in Scottsdale. Same day, same hour. I said. Then who sent it? He shrugged. I sat there, realizing how badly I wanted the answer to be simple. But it wasn't. And worse, I still didn't know who really pulled the strings. Or why. I almost believed I'd found the one behind it all. Almost. But what I learned next, it knocked the ground out from under me. Once you're no longer on the inside, you start hearing things more clearly. Even the stuff you used to ignore. 2 days after the meeting with Tom, I reached out to someone else. Not a friend. Not an enemy either. Just someone who disappeared from the company without a word, and never looked back. His name was Garrett. Former project manager. He had walked out a year ago. No explanations, no drama. Just gone. I messaged him on LinkedIn. Need to ask a few questions. No politics. Just facts. He replied an hour later. Meet me at Bean and Barrel in Westminster. 2 p.m. Don't be late. That cafe hadn't changed in years. Still smelled like cinnamon and worn-out leather. I got there early. Took the corner seat by the window. Garrett showed up right on time, long coat, darker under-eye circles, same quiet stare. He said, You took your time. I figured you'd come around. I said, You left suddenly. People noticed. He said, I noticed something too. A little too early. And when you see too much, you either shut up, or you get pushed out. He spoke fast. Tight sentences. No wasted words. He said, I saw logs disappear. Server records rewritten. HR changing hiring dates. When that happens, you're next. I said. You could have warned me. He said. You still trusted them back then. I was just a loose thread. Now you're outside too. He slid a card across the table. Printed login info. Old internal forum. Backend. Hidden tech threads for managers only. He said. Go check September 17th. Project Dusk Line. There's a name there. You'll know it. I went home. Used VPN. Logged in. Found the thread. There it was. And the name? Tom. The same Tom who warned me. Who bought me coffee. Who handed me the tablet full of internal emails. As I sat there stunned, a telegram ping came through. A contact from a contractor we'd worked with in southern Colorado. He just sent a screenshot, News headline: PNR loses federal contract worth $16.8 million. Source cites falsified documentation. No comment from company reps. PNR, my old company. The contract I helped build for 2 years. Gone. I closed the screen, sat back, and felt, not rage, not pride, just a cold, steady silence. Then came a call. No ID. I picked up. A man said, "Michael? It's Brian. I worked with Tom in Phoenix. You got a minute?" I said. "Go ahead," he said. "I don't know what Tom told you, but be careful. He was in it deep. He walked out, but not everything's as it seems." I asked what he meant. He said only this: "Check the timestamps, the signatures, and don't trust too fast." Then the line went dead. I sat there, feeling the weight of it. I wanted to believe the enemy was far away. But maybe, just maybe, I'd been looking in the wrong direction. I thought things couldn't get any worse. But what happened next hit me so hard, I started questioning everything I thought I knew about my life. Sometimes life doesn't give you answers. It just puts you in the car, starts the ignition, and you drive. Even if you don't know where. The next morning, I received an email. Plain. No attachments. From an old company address, but the name was unfamiliar. Some admin, probably. "We're conducting an internal audit. If you still have any physical records or schematics related to Project Westerfield Delta, please return them promptly." I read it twice. Delta? That was back in 2019. I'd already handed everything in, including flash drives and blueprints. I could have ignored it. But instead, I drove out to the old project storage unit we used before the restructuring. It was on the edge of Arvada, just off the freeway. The building was now leased by a construction firm. But I knew one thing: my access badge hadn't been deactivated. Not yet. The air was warm and dusty. The smell of asphalt, pine, and rust. I parked near the side door, tried my badge, nothing. I circled around the building, and ran into someone I hadn't seen in over 10 years. He said, "Michael? Damn, is that really you?" I said, "Jason?" It was Jason Howell, former engineer. He left in 2014, right after his divorce. Thinner now. Grayer. But his eyes hadn't changed. He said, "I figured you'd be talking to Tom these days." I said, "What makes you say that?" He said, "Thought I saw him at the Safeway near your place. Couple weeks ago. I assumed you two were working on something." Safeway? That was less than a mile from my house. Tom? What the hell was he doing there? I stayed silent. He said, "Just watch your back. I made the mistake of trusting too long. Took me years to see it." We said goodbye. I got in my car. Pulled up an old message thread with Tom, 2021. One line stood out. "Your Safeway's nice. Quiet lot. Good place to park in the shade." I remembered that day. I had flown out to San Diego for a site inspection. Sandra said her friend was visiting. Suddenly, it didn't feel like a coincidence. I drove home. On the way, phone buzzed. Bank alert. Pending charge request, $2,750. Unknown recipient. I canceled it. Seconds later, an email arrived. "Your card has been temporarily frozen due to suspicious activity. Please contact your branch." I stepped inside. Sandra was on the couch, going through old mail. Birthday cards from her sister, scattered in a small box. I said, "Someone just tried to move money from our account." She said, "You sure it wasn't a glitch?" I said, "I'll find out. Just weird timing, that's all." She nodded. But her face didn't look surprised. Just still. Later that evening, I went out to the car again. There was a small brown paper bag on the passenger seat. I hadn't left it there. Inside, a printed note, typed in block letters. You're looking at the obvious one. But the quiet helper? He was never really on your side. I thought I was just collecting pieces. But everything I did was part of someone else's game. And what I'll find next will make me question everything. At some point, you stop looking for answers and start hunting them. The bank email wouldn't leave my mind. No funds were missing, yet. But someone had tried to move money to a name I'd never seen before. D.R. Hawthorne. I searched old notebooks, LinkedIn, internal emails. Nothing. Until I stumbled on one old entry in a subcontractor database. D.R. Hawthorne, listed briefly as a consultant in a 2020 project. And that project? Managed by Tom. I screenshotted the entry. Emailed it to myself. Then made a decision. Monday, I'd visit someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. Doug Collins. He'd left our firm years ago, joined a competitor. Not a friend, but someone who listened. Someone who remembered. Doug's office was in Littleton now. Nothing fancy, glass panels, dull carpet, cheap coffee aroma. Security hesitated, but Doug's name got me in. He walked out after 7 minutes. He said, "You look worse than your LinkedIn photo." I replied. "Didn't sleep much?" He said. "So this isn't a social call." I handed him the screenshot. He studied it. He said, "Where'd you find this?" I replied. "Internal archive. Subcontractor lists." He led me into a side meeting room. Old projector, fake plants, dust on the blinds. Doug opened his laptop, tapped a few keys, pulled up an old financial log. He said, "This guy was added mid-contract. Came in through HR, offshore advisory role. But here's the kicker, look who signed the authorization." He pointed to the bottom of the digital document. Tom Whitmer. It was all coming together. Tom. Safeway. The odd conversations. The card alert. Now this. I said. "You think he engineered all this?" He said. "I think you're following the right trail. But you haven't seen the end of it yet." That evening I came home. The answering machine was blinking. Unknown number. Muffled voice. He said, "If you want the truth, come tomorrow. Taco Bueno. 2 p.m. Alone. No phone. No notes. Just listen." The house smelled off, like cheap vanilla mixed with burnt toast. There was an open bottle of wine on the counter. Sandra wasn't home. I slept light. Too many threads, none of them tied. Next day, Taco Bueno. Small, greasy chain on California Avenue. Smell of cinnamon and fryer oil. I walked in 5 minutes early. Tom was already there. He sat with his back to the window. 2 napkin rings on the table. Bottle of water. He nodded, gestured to sit. I said, "I thought you disappeared." He said, "I did. But now you need to understand, you're already in it." I said, "I didn't start this. I was dragged in." He slid his phone across the table. On the screen, a night photo. My house. Backyard. A figure. Blurred. Watching. He said, "Look close. This isn't a threat. It's just the truth. And the longer you ignore it, the worse it gets." I stood up. He didn't stop me. I drove home knowing this wasn't about work. Not anymore. Not even about money. It had turned personal. Too personal. I thought I understood the rules. But what I found next wasn't just a shock, it shattered everything I thought I knew. When you think the pieces are finally falling into place, be careful. That's often when someone starts shifting the whole picture behind your back. I didn't sleep after my meeting with Tom. The photo of the figure in my yard. The money trail. The silence. Then, a phone call. 2:34 a.m. Blocked number. He said, "He won't contact you again. But if you really want to know why they cut you loose, go to the old Denver storage site. Where the archives used to be. Don't wait. Tomorrow's your last chance. Click. I drove out early. Industrial zone. Steel walls, damp floors, smell of old grease and wet plywood. The keypad was dead. But the door was cracked. Someone had already been there. Inside, one table. One envelope. I opened it. A document. A wire authorization form. $180,000 transferred to an account under the name Sandra Whitmore. 2 weeks before my termination. Line item. Private consulting services, Greenwood Project. My throat went dry. Sandra? She was a schoolteacher. Never once involved in my firm's projects. Then I noticed, it listed her maiden name. Account based in Tucson, Arizona. I scrolled through our shared drive. Found a record. Sandra had traveled to Tucson 5 years ago. She'd said it was to visit a sick cousin. But the receipts told a different story. Hotels, restaurants, all billed to her personal card. One entry stood out. Dinner for 2. Blue Cactus Cafe. Second name, D. Hawthorne. When I got home, she was washing dishes. Wearing her robe. Calm. Humming something. I said, "You visited Tucson in 2019, right?" She said, "Yeah. My cousin had surgery." "Why?" I said. "Does the name Hawthorne mean anything to you?" She paused. "Just a beat, but I saw it." She said, "I knew someone by that name. Years ago. Before you." "Why are you asking?" I didn't answer. Just watched her face. She said, "Michael, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Still silence from me. That night, an email arrived. No subject. No message. Just an attachment. A photo. Tom and Sandra. In a cafe. Not romantic, but not strangers either. Timestamp, 12 days ago. I stepped outside. Cold air hit my lungs like truth. Then knock. "Neighbor's boy," he said. "Mr. Michael? Is Mrs. Sandra home?" Her car's open, and I saw someone digging in it. I ran. Glove box open. Inside, a single envelope. It had my company's logo on it. And a note. "You thought it was about money. Or your job. But the worst thing? It was always nearby. And you let it in. I thought I knew who the enemy was. But after what I just discovered, nothing makes sense anymore. And the truth I'm about to uncover will break more than just my trust. When you stop needing answers, that's when you finally see everything clearly." I didn't sleep the next night. I spent hours walking the neighborhood. Rain misted off the pavement. A fox darted past my mailbox. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. Sandra had lied. Maybe for months. Maybe longer. But I no longer needed every detail. I just needed one thing. Control. Next morning I called my lawyer. He said, "Michael. Long time. Everything okay?" I said, "I need you to pull our prenuptial agreement. And send a copy to Sandra's email." There was a pause. He said, "Are we enforcing it?" I said, "Yes. Fully." Sandra got the email that afternoon. I came home to her pacing in the kitchen, phone in hand. She said, "What is this? You think I stole from you?" I said, "You took a payment. You kept it from me. That's enough." She said, "I did what I had to do. You were obsessed with work, with loyalty. You didn't even notice when I started to disappear." I said, "No. I noticed. I just didn't believe it." She blinked. Then tears. But not grief, frustration. She knew what the prenup meant. Everything in my name stays mine. The house. The retirement. The savings. She left that night. Not a word. The next few weeks were quiet. The firm offered a formal apology, but not reinstatement. Didn't matter. I had everything I needed. But then, one message stood out. From Anna, HR assistant. Worked in my department for years. Her message said only, I always saw what you did. What you carried. You didn't deserve how it ended. If you ever want to talk, over coffee, no pressure, I'd really like that. I stared at the screen for a long time. Anna. The one who always brought 2 sugars for my coffee before meetings. The one who remembered my daughter's name. The one I never looked at, not really. Last Friday, I said yes. We met at a small corner cafe in Boulder. Pinewood tables. Fresh cinnamon rolls. She wore a blue sweater. Nothing dramatic. No declarations. Just warmth. And honesty. She said, You look lighter. Like someone who finally got rid of something heavy. I said, I did. And now I'm learning to carry better things. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, about real men who don't scream. They act. Coldly? To the end?